Hi, I'm Alan Breznick from Light Reading. We're at SCTE Cable Tech Expo in Atlanta, and I'm talking to Doug Blue from Calix. So there's a lot of focus on fiber deep and how the cable, that's the way for the cable industry to get services and gigabit speeds much faster to customers. But Calix has a different perspective. You're looking at other things besides fiber deep.
Well, so I don't know if you recall, last year we did a study that looked at multiple densities, so low, medium, and high density type deployments. Right. And we compared a node plus zero type deployment with that of a fiber to the home deployment. And it was really quite interesting, where we found that the more drops that you put into the ground, obviously the more expensive it ends up being. So fiber to the home worked very well in a low to medium density type application, right. But when you got into the high density applications, it made more sense to stick with a DOCSIS type upgrade. Okay. So what many of our customers asked us to do is go and re-look at that study again and look at a remote PHY type deployment, but not be so radical as to go to a full node plus zero. And we found that it was quite interesting that looking at a hybrid approach where you would do a remote PHY, node plus 6, maybe node plus 4 type deployment would provide you enough bandwidth within your network that then you could easily deploy PON on top of it for a much lower cost than any of the studies that we did in the previous year.
So operators wouldn't have to go fiber deep?
No, as a matter of fact, I think we've, as an industry, have made a calculated, let's just say, misunderstanding, if you will. Probably not the right words, but essentially, everyone's assuming that if you wanted to go to a node plus zero remote PHY type of environment with very small nodes, right. You would need to go all in. But we're finding that remote PHY in a node cascaded type environment, where you would have a node plus 3, node plus 4 right. type setup, would give you enough bandwidth that then you could deploy PON and overlay that on top of it.
So keep your amplifiers and go to PON.
Exactly. Well, and also still make the incremental investments into 3.1. And one of the key components of this also is you start over time bleeding your high bandwidth customers off and moving it over to PON. So by doing so and doing, for example, 10% a year over time, right. That allows you to maintain your assets with a DOCSIS type of environment, right. But then slowly migrate to PON.
And DOCSIS 3.1 and PON play well together.
They do, and one of the key things that we believe really is important is having an operating system that can coexist with a virtualized CCAP type of environment. You may recall Calix has an operating system called AXOS, and AXOS allows us to use containerized or components within our operating system and either have them reside on the hardware or virtualize them into the cloud. So we have the compute power and the actual applications in the network where it makes the most sense. So when you move to a virtualized type of architecture, that enables us to then move certain functions and features alongside of that. So we can coexist with a virtual CCAP world that very few PON vendors have really even been thinking about.
And what kind of new equipment would cable operators need for that?
From an equipment perspective, the virtual CCAP is, obviously moving things into the data center. Right. But when you start looking at having two things, one is a node-based OLT that has an operating system that allows you to virtualize things, plus you have a DOCSIS provision system that then can also easily pivot to an SDN type architecture, right. Then those are the two key elements that allow you to make that migration and coexist with a DOCSIS type environment. And at Calix, that's what we've been focusing on for the last several years.
Okay, so an interesting alternative to fiber deep.
That's exactly it.
Thanks, Doug.
I appreciate it.